Last month, we reimagined Star Wars with Anderson-esque charm, and now we're taking on Lord of the Rings. Inspired by a YouTube video where creators brilliantly transformed Tolkien's world into a Wes Anderson trailer, I decided to take the concept further. Join me as we blend the iconic faces of Wes Anderson's ensemble with Tolkien's legendary characters, crafting a cinematic tribute that bridges two beloved universes.
Let's just dive right in
to the artistry behind this Wes Anderson-inspired Lord of the Rings alternative movie poster. For those of you that don't know, this is basically what I do for a living. I design movie posters, and this is kind of a fun series. It gives you a look inside how I would go about designing a montage-style poster, and the fun thing is that we're going to be using a lot of AI. And it's kind of a good technique or a way to learn if doing montage posters is new to you. The first thing I had to do was jump on Midjourney and look for all of our characters. So I replaced the Lord of the Rings actors and actresses with Wes Anderson actors and actresses. Some of the Midjourney images are really funky, didn't make sense, like this axe going the wrong direction. So what I did is just masked it out, then I masked the axe out, made a copy, flipped it, and then went ahead and used the warp tool to kind of get it in a place I wanted it to be in. The next thing we want to do is mess with this Jeff Goldblum with an bow and arrow. It's a really cool image, but I'm not digging his face. So I just made a copy of the face that I wanted to place on the image, and then I use a little bit of opacity. And I like to line up the eyeballs, and that can kind of give us a good idea of the size that we're going for. So you don't have a too big of a head or a too small of a head, but it's a lot of give and go, looking back and forth until you get it perfect. Then the position of the upper part of the bow was bothering me, so I masked out that bottom one, made a copy, and then flipped it around and placed it on top, and then was able to adjust that top bow so it looks a lot better. Then I wanted to move the arrow above his thumb, so I masked a piece of that arrow out, made a copy, and did the same thing, placed it where I wanted it. Then I used the lasso tool to create a selection and create an area that I wanted to change to get rid of that arrow. Then all I did was use the stamp tool and get a little bit of the fabric and clothing within that selection. After that, I looked at the hand and I needed to get rid of that bowstring. And a quick way to do that is to use the content-aware fill. Then, of course, just made some minor adjustments on the angle of the arrow. Our next move was just to drop in the Lord of the Rings poster, the original, and start putting our masked out characters together so that it was very similar. As soon as I had that done, I mapped out some of my problem areas. One being Jeff Goldblum's bow and arrow is right in the face of Boromir, so I needed to fix that. Then I needed to mess around with the hands and the sword for Ed Norton, so we'll figure that out a little later. Then we just had to skinny up Frodo, which is a quick fix. So with Frodo, I just got the puppet warp tool out one more time and warped his shoulders in. The quick fix for the arrow and Jeff Goldblum is I just made one copy, shifted it over, and then masked out his image to reveal the image behind him, and did that vice versa with the hand. Now, the one thing that was bugging me was Jeff Goldblum's thumb. I wanted to fix that, so I lassoed where his thumb should be, and then just used the brush tool to paint in using the flesh tones to make it a little realistic. Then after that, I had to go ahead and paint in the tip of the arrow. Now on to Ed Norton's sword. I thought it would be cool not to have a real sword, but just go ahead and get a wooden sword. So I went on over to Envato and picked up some stock photography. I found a cool wooden sword, downloaded that, and dropped it back in. Once I had it masked out, I was able to put it in place and enlarge it just a little bit so that it would go towards the top of the poster. just going to throw this out there, but I'm now selling alternative movie posters on postergrind.com. So go ahead and check out the link below, and you can kind of see some of the alternative movie posters that I've been working on with my friends. And this one is on there as well. When I took a step back to see where I was at, it bothered me that Bill Murray didn't really have enough accessories, and I wanted him to pop out. So I went back into Midjourney and I found a great shot of a cool blazer with a beanie. Figured I'd use that and enhance his image. Once his beanie was placed, I would just use the brush tool to add some shadow. Now it's time to really get his beard looking a lot better. And to do that, we needed to add some flyaways and just more beard hair. And I like to use the soft round pressure brush to do that. It's probably my second most used brush in movie poster design. And I'll try and make the hair or the beard look as natural as possible, just picking colors from different spots of the beard and painting them in. After that, I decided to color that wooden sword. I just used a curve, increased the darks, and that pretty much colored it for me. Now the next move is I wanted to start to see what our typography was going to look like, so I opened up Illustrator, I dragged in the Life Aquatic, and used the pretty much similar font that was on that with the same style, the outline type. Went ahead and made that and then dropped it back in and then had it put in place. Now that we're moving along in the poster, I wanted to start to add the atmosphere and the cloudy feel, which would go in between the characters so that they have some room to breathe so that they're easier to read. So I went ahead and used a cloud brush, which you can usually find online or at envato.com. And by the way, if you need to use envato.com, I have an affiliate link below. I will put it in the description. I think it's only about $200 a year for unlimited images and brushes and all sorts of graphic assets. After I had my first run of cloud and atmosphere dropped in, I figured we might as well add some ground. So I used the perspective tool to bring it up a little bit. It doesn't have to be perfect because in the end, we're going to have a lot of clouds covering the ground anyway. You just kind of need a little bit to peep through. After that, I added some more shadow using the brush tool, really basic. Once those shadows were looking good, I dropped in a really cool background that I found on Midjourney. And then I went back in and fixed some of the cloud as well as the typography. And then I added some owls and some mushrooms just to give it a little bit more character. Now that we have our poster in a really good place, I want to do a final touch, and that's adding a little bit more of a treatment to it. So to do that, I'm going to hit Shift Option Command E on a new layer. Then we're going to convert that to a smart object. And then we're going to drop it into Camera Raw. Once we're in Camera Raw, we're going to mess around with some of these adjustments. And then once you're happy with the results, you can just go ahead and hit OK. Another move that I like to do is use the color balance adjustment, and there you can kind of mess around with the colors even more. If you want to warm it up or cool it down, depending on what project you're working on, it's usually a good idea to finish with color balance. And then on top of color balance, I can throw a little vibrance, increase the vibrance and saturation just to give it a little bit more saturation. And then one other thing I did was add some texture. So I went to texturelab.org, dropped in some textures, masked out areas where it was too strong, and then zoomed in, and you can kind of see that it gives it a really cool vibe. I'm happy with where this poster ended up. Let me know what you guys think, and if you have suggestions for some future poster mashups, leave them down below in the comments. Thanks.